So there used to be something called natural philosophy, which was um, which is still vestigial in the universities. Uh, PhD is handed out to physicists. Um, Retain that, of course. Um, so if we want to put that in a form which makes it parallel to this of business. Um, the people have been raising this question of how the word of is operating in some of these recent recordings. So Husserl has said that philosophy, natural philosophy, has become philosophy of nature. So, which means that everything flows from nature, and philosophy or science is secondary. It simply attempts to read out of nature. If you made a parallel construction for the sake of clarity, you could say the old way of thinking was so not natural philosophy, but nature of philosophy. How does nature appear to the philosophic gaze? How does nature appear to nous, or to this part of the intellect that can stand back in this Socratic death and look at things according to a kind of analysis which thinks in terms of substances as the unity of a thing and accidents, and in terms of centers of agency. The emphasis on observation, which goes with the modern notion of the scientific fact, that which is observed externally and described, especially in terms of some kind of measurement, go with the science of nature or philosophy of nature. And perhaps in the purest form, in the formulation of the so-called positivism of Auguste Comte, CLMTE, only the observation, not the metaphysics, which is to say not the hypothesizing of a substance, not treating this which is accessed only by the mind as having a central status. So here we're talking about, and it's directly related, this question of a Dasein of Simmel. So Simmel, I included the video about some short things about Simmel's explicitly philosophic, let's call it, or explicitly non-sociological thinking, which he carried out at the very end of his life in the Dunkel Schwarzwald in the Black Forest, the dark Black Forest during World War One. So he said, I stopped reading the newspapers, and which had a great significance for the Prussians of that time. This idea of not being caught up with the bourgeois cave of the newspapers and retreating into this space where one could seek genius in its proper signification, which would coincide with science in the old sense, in the Platonic sense, Socratic sense. And there he did carried out some reflections of a specifically philosophic nature, but much more powerful. And Simmel is one of the most powerful thinkers that's currently alive. Let's just say his thinking as an Aragon, as a work, is floating amongst us, living amongst us. Has to do with this establishing of the fact-value distinction. So, of course, Human made some comments about the is and the ought, which are fairly casual comments in some way, but of course they're part of his larger project. And Kant had picked up on those, and then Kant had been called this the all crusher, and so he put aside all this substantive analysis, and we gone on into this generalizing analysis. So I remember Nietzsche has made some comments about this. It's interesting that their mode of doing physics coincides with the mode of thinking in general in the new philosophy, this generalizing rather than treating with the actual specific cases rather than rational analysis. So is there a Dasein of Simmel, and what would it be? So Simmel, as clarified with the fact-value distinction, this difficulty which is lodged by Nietzsche, which has to do with which echoes with the Platonic notion of going from the opinions to knowledge, and this notion that the philosopher stands somehow between opinions and knowledge, where there's a question that Socrates poses a number of times of whether knowledge and wisdom are the same thing. Socrates was the phronimos, meaning he had good sense, prudence with regard to his daily affairs, but was he wise? There was something up above him, and he said, if I would see somebody who set a moral an example of how to comport myself in daily life, which was enviable, to put in the Aristotelian way of thinking about it, I would then endeavor to become like that. So he left open, at least in the Socratic apology of Socrates, he left open this possibility of wisdom up above this daily knowledge of the phronimos. But all that plays no role in analysis of strictly observed experiment. So rules of behavior belong to future rather than to what is already there in a certain way. Um, the flow between the two is very questionable. That's what one would have to show, even that the wisp of the future can come into the things already there and change them, to show that Dasein is really in its full exercise as an ergon. So Simmel is dealing with time here, just as Heidegger was in his Dasein, in, for example, his analogy of the chess player who, for if he didn't know the basic rules of chess, chess would be impossible if he couldn't read the condition of the board, the condition of the board in the what's already there. He could do nothing. If he could see all the way to the end of the game would be odious or idle. There'd be no point in playing. But that Dasein is somehow also in this condition. And then the issue is simply how to grab the rudder or steer to some extent. And I tried to link that to Heidegger on the subject of inner responsibility in this World War I period, where he points to the pacifist conference up in the north of Germany as exemplary for the youth to think about in the dedication to Paul Natorp in the Sophist book. I think here also of what Strauss says about Pascal, that we know too little to be dogmatists. We don't really know what's already there, but we know too much to be skepticists, which is to say, in some way, we do know the position as it's already there. This attempt at the same time to overlay the Dasein of Simmel would be to overlay the most popular, the most authoritative Dasein, which is the scientific Dasein, because the fact-value distinction is the all-pervasive moira or fate of each Dasein within under the fiery power of what's the Plato's word for the clear fiery sky? I forget the not apeiron, but I have to remember the word. But that if the sciences are the greatest authority for everyone today, then it means the fact-value distinction is the greatest authority in some way, with the obvious sense that we think that the physicists can establish facts, but they can't establish facts about the law, for instance. And then this question of the constitutive power to be the founder of a regime rather than the lawmaking power, which could be regarded as a technical power of just properly applying the laws, comes into the basic core of our thinking of Dasein and of Heidegger here. So there's a sense that Heidegger radicalizes this Hobbesian sense that we must not let the dead rule over the living. So I tried to get more clarity on the how Simmel is working here going forward, if that's of any interest. And maybe we can see about this Straussian Dasein also, and whether this kind of attempt to treat the ergon of Dasein as operating in different Moria or individual Dasein makes any sense.